So good morning, everybody. Today we're going to talk about throughout the year, for those of you who consistently joining us over here in these sessions, you see that throughout the year I'm talking about disclosures, and the reason I talk about disclosures is because that 95% of the cases, I would say even more than 95%, 95% of the cases that ending up in litigation after the sale of a real estate transaction, it's because of disclosures or non-disclosures. And it's ending up both directions, not necessarily always the seller is being liable, or not necessarily the buyer is prevailing, but at the end of the day, it's all about what disclosed, was not disclosed, if it was, and so on. So what I'm going to talk today, I'm not going to talk about the actual disclosure statement. I'm not going to talk about the SPQ. I'm going to talk to you about something. I'm going to elevate the conversation today. I'm going to elevate it in a sense that I would expect you today to think as a little bit lawyerly. What does it mean, lawyerly? I want you to think like a super agent, not a regular agent that just push the paperwork. A little bit of super agents, which means you will understand the logic behind non-disclosure and disclosure. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go most probably slide or two slides one by one, and then I'm going to pause. I'm going to ask you questions because it's a little bit going to be overwhelming. But guys, I promise you, if you grasp what we're about to talk right now, I promise you that you will be, the information that you possess will help you later on in your transaction. So everybody is ready? Everybody, I see more people are joining us. Everybody is ready, right? Okay, so let's talk about, why it's not moving. Okay, so everybody talks disclosures, and it's a big word and very mighty word, and everybody says, oh, you got to disclose, you got to disclose. But you have to understand that disclosures, there is always a gap. Nobody really knows what is that gap, what is the bare minimum required by the law, and what is what we're expecting from us to do, okay? And what is required by law, and what is the risk management procedures, which is usually us, that we have to do. So nobody really knows. I mean, it's not something set in stone, and every time we're getting into that. But we will try toward the end of this presentation, we will try to put you in the space of where we are. So let's get going on that. Okay, what does it mean, non-disclosures? So I want you to understand, and this is the fundamental of a non-disclosure case. In order to prove that a seller not disclosed, we have to prove that the seller actually knew, okay, actually knew about the issue. If the seller never knew about the issue, I mean, we can come and say, hey, nobody disclosed, but think about that. You cannot disclose something you don't know. So we will have to actually go, if we are on the buyer side, and prove under no circumstances that the seller actually knew. Now, this is not easy. We have to actually prove it, and us as agents, most of the time we're not going to be able to do it. It will have to go to litigation, providing evidences and subpoenas and stuff like that. It depends how difficult it is, but the fundamental, and you have to remember that, it's very simple. In order to nail the seller, we have to make sure that the seller actually knew, period. And that's very important. And we had a case, not a case, but it was an incident about a month ago on a transaction that one of the agents closed, and there was problem right after that. And we would try to establish what the seller knew and what the seller not knew. I saw that it's at the end of the day, I mean, the seller said they never knew about that, and couldn't be that they never knew there was a water problem. But in order to solve this, we will have to actually file a lawsuit and subpoena and put in the position under oath and so on and so on. And then maybe the truth will come. So that's something that we have to always remember. We have to make sure that the seller knew. Now, when we can know that the seller knew, if we see an active concealment. Now, what does it mean, active concealment? Let's say, and we had this in one of our transactions some time ago, if the seller actually conceals something. So let's say, for example, and you know what, I'll give you an example that we had a real one. There was a leakage, a pipe burst in the garage. So what the seller did, he fixed the leakage, and they dig the wall, they dig the hole inside the garage, and then they put cement and conceal it with other stuff. Luckily, the inspector found out. He found out, he was pointing out to there is some active concealment. So the seller did not disclose anything about that. That's an active concealment. So basically, the seller was supposed to say, guys, there was a problem, I repaired it, and that's it. And if the seller didn't do it, that means an active concealment, and that cannot be that the seller didn't know that there is a leakage problem, or the seller didn't know that there was a water problem, because the seller needs to disclose if there was an issue like that. Okay, so now what does it mean, partial disclosures, partial non-disclosures? Partial non-disclosures, it means that the seller duty to disclose is only limited for a material fact. What does, anybody can tell me what does it mean, a material fact? Anybody can write me, what does it mean, a material fact? Guys, are you ready? What is a material fact? Give me an example. Okay, Nick is writing. Okay, do you encourage, so Wanda is writing, do you disclose everything, or do you not say anything and let them say? Actually, it's a very good question, Wanda. If I encourage, yes. When we send this TVS and SPQ to the seller, we tell them, guys, disclose everything. Everything that you have, disclose. We cannot, and I mentioned that many times, we cannot fill these documents to the seller. However, we can guide them. We can guide them and say, listen, let's go back and try to remember, and so on and so on. Are you sure that there was not anything like that? I mean, we are protecting the sellers. Now, we'll get to what we know and what we don't know later on. But yes, definitely. Because some people think that it is, we cannot disclose that, that's going to blow the deal. You know what? It's better that it's going to blow the deal now rather than blow a lawsuit later on, because these things usually come up, they're usually surfaced. And also, sometimes people think that over proportion, they're taking things over proportion, and they think, we're going to disclose that, it's going to blow the deal. No, you know what? It's not a big deal. Happens. Okay? Very good, Wanda. So what is material fact? So anybody knows what's a material fact? Guys, it's important. Okay, Can I pick on, okay, Nick wants it. Anything negatively affecting value or buy decision to buy. Very good. Okay, excellent, Nick. Excellent. Okay, when it's a matter of facts. No, Wanda, matter of fact, it's real. Yeah, everything is real, but Joanna, it's either it says to disclose. Okay, so usually something. Okay, I'll go with Nick on that, and everything that negatively affecting the property. So basically, whatever is affecting the integrity of the property, and this is a material fact, something that got to be affecting the property, affecting the value, affecting the integrity, affecting the structure of the property. That's a material fact. Now, what is not a material fact or essential fact? For example, if the seller changed the screen door prior to sell the property, is that a material fact that they need to disclose this? Yes or no, guys? Something. Yes. Joanna says that if we change the screen door, it's we have to disclose it because it's a material fact. Wanda says no. Robin says yes because it could affect the desirability. Okay, good point, Robin. Olivia says yes. Okay, now it's a good point, Robin, and I want to go with that, and Olivia is joining us. So we all know that before we put the house, and this is something we tell our seller, why don't you beautify the place before we put it on the market? I see some agents over here that do that, which is very smart. You want the place to be appealing to the buyer. So painting, it's nice, right? Now painting, we have to disclose because of the lead base, but painting, putting flowers, beautify the lawn, even sometimes when you do put paintings on the wall, when you do staging, all this beautify the place. It's not a material fact. So if we change, for example, the screens on the windows look dirty. If we change those screens and put new ones, this is not a material fact. We are just beautifying the place, making it affecting the desirability. Okay, I'm reading what Robbins wrote. So yes, that's not a material fact. That's just beautify the place, and it got nothing to do with the integrity of the property. However, if you change the wall, or you changed a window, you changed not the screen, you changed the actual window, you took it from the frame and everything, that means that you affected the integrity of the property, and this is something that you have to disclose. Okay? Everybody understood what I just said, the differences? Whoever didn't understand, I want you to write it down over here. Okay. Now, we'll go to another thing which is very important, guys. Once the seller disclosed the fact, the seller is not anymore under any circumstances, he is not under any obligation to elaborate on the disclosed fact. For example, let's go back to the window. If the seller disclosed that they replaced the window in the kid's bedroom, they don't need to disclose anything else, and they don't need to disclose why and if and so on and so on. They just need to say replaced window 2 months before on the market, or replaced window 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and so on and so on. Beautiful. So remember that. Because I see many agents says, oh, no, we want you to explain us why. I don't need to explain you why. I just disclose it, and that's good enough for me. I'm Mr. Seller. Questions on that, guys? Questions on what the seller's duty? It's very important. Okay, Nick is writing. We're all waiting for Nick right now. Okay, it's clear. Oh, Rhonda says, fine. Okay, guys, let's move on to the buyer. Okay, so buyer duty to inspect the property. Buyer's duty to inspect the property. Buyer has certain duties to build the case. So let's talk about this right now. When these things is going to litigation, when the whole thing, Nick is saying, how long back do we need to go? That's a good point. I would say that if you change the window just before you put it on the market, yes, you have to put it. But if you change the window 15 years ago, 10 years ago, it's not material. It's nothing. But if you change a wall or move the wall or something like that, yes, you have to go back and forever you did it. Okay. Good question, Nick. Rhonda, how much time does the buyer has to inspect the property? The buyer during the escrow has a certain period of time for the inspection. 17, 30 days, 5 days. Sometimes the buyer removed move that right. That's the time they have to inspect the property. And let's talk about it right now. Good question. The duty to inspect the property is critical, and it's very critical for the buyer to show that they did that. Because most of the judges, the arbitrators, they want to see that the buyer made an actually visual inspection, okay, and that's and they were responsible. So every time that you have somebody says we're not going to do physical inspection, unless it's an investor that it's about to tear down the house or really do certain things, seriously do not suggest that, because you need to show that you actually did something. Okay, so I need to sign off. Okay, bye Robin, take care of yourself. Oh, grandson, beautiful. Okay, so the buyer needs to conduct their investigation. Okay, so but guys, if the buyer didn't do that and he didn't do their investigation, that by itself doesn't relinquish the seller and the seller's agent naturally from the obligation to do the disclosures. So the buyer needs to do their investigation. It's important that they will do it, because they will come and say, we did the investigation, we conducted what we need to conduct, but at the end of the day, the seller still needs to do what they need to do, and that means to disclose. So we go back to what seller knew, okay? Because if seller honestly and reasonably believe what they are saying, they're saying the truth and they wrote it over there, the buyer has to show that they undertook the reasonable investigation. So for example, okay, the seller wrote that, not wrote, they didn't indicate anything about, you know what, we had this case. We had a seller that bought a property and they never knew that there was a septic tank. They only knew, they thought, nobody disclosed it to them. So a few years after that, they sold the property. They didn't say anything about the septic tank, okay? Because they didn't know there was a septic tank. Everything was perfect. The buyer came and did the investigation and says, hey, Mr. Seller, how come you didn't disclose there is a septic tank? The seller says, excuse me, I never knew that there was a septic tank. So think about that. If the buyer wouldn't do the investigation, okay, and it was closing escrow, and the buyer will come to him and says, listen, how come you didn't disclose? And the seller says, listen, I didn't know. Okay? The buyer will have a tough time winning this, because they didn't do the investigation. And the seller didn't know, because that's how the seller bought it. There was a chain of misconduct or mismanagement of the transaction, and it happens. These things happen, okay? So, duty to conduct further investigation and being on notice. And this is very important, guys, okay? When you as a buyer, and representing the buyer, when you see that there is something suspicious, okay? And you see that the seller lying or something like that, that will create legal duty to conduct further investigation. You have to conduct further investigation. For example, if your basic home inspection see that there is a problem, and it says this is above the scope of my duty, your job is to order a further investigation, which basically order a special inspector. Ordering, for example, he says, listen, I see something in the roof, they need to order a roof inspector. So, and when you see something that you say, okay, this is something that the seller must know about that, you have to actually order a further investigation. So, on you and the buyer, and naturally the buyer agent, this is, that's the point. And when you do these reports, I mean, don't be shy to spend the money. Encourage your seller encourage your buyer to spend the money and make sure that you do a thorough investigation, because it's important. Now, as I say, you have to, that's your job. Okay, let's do what happens when the seller misrepresentation is discovered before closing. Okay, buyer has two choices, and it's very important that you know, okay, because it's not black and white. First of all, you saw that you can cancel the escrow and claim damages. What kind of damages? The physical inspection, if you did an appraisal, the appraisal, and so on and so on. But you can cancel, don't continue the contract. So you can cancel and ask for that. But that's only if you, under no circumstances, you found out that the seller was misrepresenting the facts. Now, you have another way is to proceed and close, but the moment you proceed and close, despite the fact you actually know about this, you're going to lose your further claims. So your buyer will come to you and will say, and I want you to remember that, your buyer will come to you and will say, you know what, let's close and I'll go after the seller after that. No, you cannot do that. Because the moment you know about that and you didn't take action in escrow, you're going to lose your legal ground further on. Because the judge is going to ask you, says, why did you proceed with the closing when you knew that there is a problem? You knew there was a problem, you proceed with the closing, but you're with no good faith, you're coming now and asking to court to award you damages, but you knew there is a problem, okay? So you have the liberty to go and cancel the escrow, which you didn't, okay? Everybody understood what I just said. This is important. This is important because I cannot even tell you how many times I've seen it. Olivia? Wonderful. Okay, everybody understood, Nick, Olivia, everybody understood this, right? So, very simple. You found out, cancel escrow. You decided that you want to move forward, and you lose your ground, okay? What agent duty when seller doesn't disclose? And this is, guys, one of the most important things about us, okay? When we get sucked into a lawsuit, okay? Because usually most of the lawsuits, we're going to be part of the defendants. And being part of the defendants, we have to prove that we didn't know anything. So let's assume during the conversations with the seller, we just found out that the seller actually did not disclose something. So we telling the seller, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, why don't you go and amend the TDS? And you can do that. You can do an addendum which amending the TDS or the SPQ. It's better to amend it before close of escrow, because after close of escrow you cannot amend. So, but the seller tells you, no, we're not going to amend, I want to keep it this way. What do? Anybody tells me what do you do? Anybody can tell me? Okay, so let me show you. Disclose, disclose, disclose. You write your notes. Exactly, Wanda. Very good, Wanda. Disclose, disclose, disclose. The fact that the seller is a crook, the fact that the seller is eager to get into trouble, it's not your problem. You need to come clean. I mean, if you didn't know, there is something I say, whatever you don't know cannot kill you. But if you know already, you cannot disclose that, you cannot participate in the conspiracy under no circumstances. So what do? Here's the form. In the TDS, in the last page, there is a place that we sign, okay? But there is a place over here, as you can see, that we check the box. And if we did the avid, we check here and we put the avid over here. And if we have nothing to disclose, we put it here. However, you see this, the last one over here that I checked the box, agents note the following items. This is where you write your stuff. Don't be shy to write your stuff, guys, okay? And the seller tells you, if the seller tells you, why did you do it? It says, this is my responsibility. I'm sorry, this is my license, not yours. And I have to write it, okay? You don't want to disclose, it's your problem, okay? I know it's not easy, guys, but I'm telling you, if you're not going to do it here, you're going to end up in court with the seller, okay? So far, anybody understood everything? Everybody understood, right? Okay, so you are semi-attorneys right now, and I can tell you that by understanding this, and this is being recorded today, by understanding this, you will have a little bit the higher end over other agents, because most of the agents do not know this. They don't know exactly what is this all about, even sometimes seasoned agents. So you can ask for Mabul the recording if you want to go over this, but again, remember, disclose, disclose, disclose. Always disclose. Okay, guys, so we finished a little bit earlier, 2 minutes earlier. It was a pleasure to have you along. Any other questions if we have time? You want to take the time to ask a question? No? We good? Okay. Take care, guys. All the best. Bye-bye.